Hello and welcome to WLC 311. In this video we are continuing our discussion of first language acquisition. When children acquire morphology, they undergo three phases. When they are at the two-word stage, they actually may produce suppletive forms. So they may say, "Mommy broke," when mommy breaks a dish or something. They may say brought. But at this level, you have to understand that these are what we call chunks. There's no internal structure to them. They're just mimicking forms they've heard. Phase 2, however, at or about 4, they are applying rules. So breaked and bringed, sometimes parents get upset about this, but it's actually a better phase than phase 1. Phase 3, then, sometimes learned at school, sometimes learned at home. They will produce the suppletive forms while producing regular forms. L2 learners of languages with rich inflection give evidence of this inflection at a very young age. So these examples are from your book. The child, in one case, is 1 year and 10 months, in the other case, 2 years and 4 months. So tu leggi, that has subject-verb agreement. Giovado has subject-verb agreement. E mia gonna, we're missing the article, but we have agreement between the possessive and the noun. Mio bimbo, again, we are missing the article, but we do have agreement in terms of gender with the possessive and the noun. Then we have in topo piccolino, and here we have a mouse that is little, and piccolino is agreeing with topo in gender and number. There was a WUG test that was conducted of children who were 4, and what it did was show that they apply the correct plural allomorph, that they have learned that, and they can apply it to words they've never heard. So we've discussed this earlier, but they gave children pictures of these friendly monsters, and they said, "This is a WUG, talk about this now," and the picture had more than one, and the children all said WUGs, and they did it with other nouns as well. So they actually understand phonemes, and they're not just imitating words. There is also early evidence that children have mastered derivational morphology. So, for example, when I was a child, I used to say things like, "I hooved with the hoover," "I pledged with the pledge," and that shows that I had early evidence of derivational morphology. I could create words from nouns. This is very similar. You have to scale it. I broomed it up. He's keying the door. So you have to weigh it. I swept it up, and he's opening the door with the key. In English, Brown and her colleagues did a lot of they conducted a lot of studies on how we acquire morphology, and this is language specific, so this is English. Ing shows up very early. We saw that example with ing in the two-word stage. In, on, you think that's very easy. Well, then why are you in the car and on the bus? And we can come up with several other examples like that. Those of you who've learned English as a second language will confirm that the difference between those two is very complex. They learn the plural next. So they'll say two doggies, two doggies. Then they learn irregular past forms, baby went. Then they figure out the possessive marker, and we know that the possessive marker follows the same rule as the plural, but this shows us that they are actually learning morphemes and not just sounds. They get the verb is. They learn articles, because we didn't have articles consistently before, even though some do show up. They get the regular past. Then they get the third person singular marker, which again mimics the plural and the possessive, but they will say two doggies, and they'll say Johnny come. So that shows us that it's not a phonological rule for them, it's a morphological rule. And then we get the auxiliary be as he is coming. Not all children are going to have these patterns at all times, but it is, broadly speaking, accurate for English. How do they learn syntax? Well, even their earliest utterances, their holophrastic utterances, show some knowledge of syntax. So up, pick me up. Very young children, 17 months, they show a group of them videos of Sesame Street, and we had Ernie is tickling Bert. And they will look at the video display that corresponds to the sentence. So they don't look at the video display where Bert is tickling Ernie. And this is also remarkable because you have to understand the word order to process the sentence. Again, the competence precedes the production. So we have competence, but there is an issue with the performance. All right, we're going to kind of quickly go over some slides that have to do with the acquisition of specific aspects of syntax, but I don't expect you to memorize these, but I do expect you to gain some appreciation for the complexity of the language that children must learn. Negation, what children do at first is add no. So no cookie, no comb hair. So their rule is no plus the rest of the utterance. Then we have daddy, no comb hair. And daddy, now we have no in front of a verb. Don't touch that. Sometimes commands will have don't. Those of you who've studied English as a second language know that we have to have don't in the negative. Then we get some verb forms, some modals. I can't do it. He don't want it. But we're not yet conjugating the verb don't, for example. Then we get you didn't have supper, she doesn't want it, I don't have no more candies. We've got a negation that doesn't match necessarily the adult speech. It might, depending on the dialect. But you can see that stage 4, we are already at basically the adult grammar. So negation is extremely complex in English, and the children are acquiring it in this order. Questions. Questions are also very complex in English. So what is learned first? So JP, as you notice, learned sat, so that we identify things. Where and who then emerge very quickly. Why emerges at about 2, and everything is why. And that's very useful. It drives parents nuts sometimes, but why gets a response from adults. And then how and when, why would how and when emerge later? Well, if you think about it, now we know we need some cognitive development, and we also need some pragmatic development. So when is very complex. You have to have some understanding of the passage of time. So I think I told you for my youngest, tomorrow was a time phrase that she used at any time, for past, for future. But what's interesting is she knew she needed a time expression. She just was not at the cognitive level yet of sorting out yesterday from today, which are deictic expressions, are they not? All right, so how do they learn questions? Well, they start out with intonation. Cookie, mommy, book, but they're also going to learn some questions as chunks, meaning that they learn it as a whole. So where's daddy, what's that? You can't take that too seriously when they're very young because they don't have any understanding of the internal structure of the question. Then you'll get, you like this, I have some, and we still have intonation, but we don't have complete sentences. Can I go? Are you happy? Is the teddy is tired? Do I can have a cookie? Again, English questions are extraordinarily complex because sometimes we have to, sometimes we have a modal, sometimes we have the verb to be, and children at stage 3, they are not quite there, but they are producing a much wider range of questions. Stage 4 then, they are inverting yes, no, but they're having trouble in WH questions. So you're hearing, are you going to play with me, and do dogs like ice cream? But with question words, you're still going, why you want to know. Stage 5, are these your boots? Why did you do that? Why the teddy bear can't go outside? The child here is inverting yes, no with some WH questions, but negative WH questions and inversions still may lag behind. And stage 6 now we have adult-like competence. The acquisition of pragmatics. Children have problems with deixis, which we talked about, with the shifting pronoun reference of pronouns, so they may refer to themselves as you. My youngest thought that one of her names was Theng, and I realized that it was because it was then, which is the word you say in Spanish when you're handing a child something. So she interpreted that as one of her names, and she would call herself Theng in addition to calling herself her name. I and you are extremely difficult, as we've seen, because it depends on the speaker and the hearer, and children do have trouble with that, as do second language learners. They do have problems with context-dependent nature of deictic words. So again, if they say he, they assume that you know who he is because they know who he is. They know who they're referring to, but you may have absolutely no idea. So deictic pronouns are problematic. I gave you the example of my youngest reaching her hands up and say, I carry you, when she wanted to be carried. So children, again, will have trouble with first and second person pronouns, and they also may have some trouble with third person pronouns. They don't have trouble, but we have trouble understanding them sometimes.